Welcome back to Freedom Fridays. This is the second part of our series where we're asking the question, how can we defend creationism, or creation as we see it in the Bible, scientifically? Last week we left off when we were talking about the ark, and we were talking about how could Noah fit all of the species of animals on the ark, and we said that it didn't have to be every species, it had to be every kind. And we also talked about the ability to reproduce and such. But as we think about kinds, think about this with cats. Let's start with cats, although I'm not necessarily. I like cats. Some cats are scary. I don't want to meet a puma in a dark alley. But when you think about cats, let's take a look at the genetics of cats. And so let's go back and, with genetics, we talk about to simplify it, we talk about big letters, small letters, dominant or recessive genes. Like big A would be dominant A, and little a would be recessive A, big B, little b. And, it's much more complex than that, obviously. But if we had, let's say we had genes for long and short-haired cats. Big A, big B is long hair. Little a, little b is short-haired. And so we've got the cats that start out that have all of the information. Big A, big B, little b. Because you get chromosomes you get from each parent. So you'll get an A or a B from each parent, from the father and the mother. You'll get an A and a B. So you're either going to be AA, BB of some sort. And let's say the animals at the top of the chain had big A, big B, little b. Both of them have those. What children can they have? Well, they can have children that are big A, big B, big B, big B. So they have all capitals. They have all the big letters. Those would be the long hair cats. Or they could have children that have little b. Those might be the short hair cats. So we've got the long hair cats, the short hair cats, and then, you say, what about the different ones? What about the ones that have big A, big B, little b, or the other way around, which really would turn out to be the same thing? Those are the medium hair cats. And you would expect to see the bulk of the population in that area. And so as you find those, then they could produce, the parents could produce the genetic combination of all those different things that we might call species now. And it might not just be hair length. It could be any sorts of characteristics of their body. And so we see all these different characteristics of genetics that allow them to just have two parents for all these variations. And they don't need tigers on there and lions on there and, no, I'm not going to say bears, and mountain lions on there and a tabby cat on there. And all they need is two cats that have the same, that have the genetic makeup and combinations to produce everything we see now. In fact, in the flood, they probably lost information. And that's what happens over time with genetics, is we lose information. Because if you think in the case of the long-haired cats that have big A, big B, little b, they've lost the little b's. They can no longer produce offspring. If they mate with another cat of the same genetic code, they can no longer produce the offspring for short hair. They can only produce long hair offspring. And you'd have to introduce that back with another cat in order to get that short hair gene back. And so what do we see around the earth? We see that as things spread out, you find different characteristics grouped together, whether it be color, whether it be hair characteristics, whether it be all sorts of different things. We find those grouped together as different groups would spread out after the flood and keep together, because in some of that you say, well, why would they do that? Well, some of it is climate. If you have a colder climate, your cats with the longer hair are going to survive better than the cats with the short hair. On the contrary, if it's a warmer climate, your shorter hair cats are going to survive better and more efficiently than longer hair cats. And that's what they call natural selection. That is true natural selection. Natural selection is not an evolutionary thing. It's just a genetic thing. It's something that happens because of characteristics that are more favorable to survive in a specific environment. So how could Noah fit all those on? He didn't need them all. He only needed the ones that had the code to produce everything that we have. Next question, where did Cain get his wife? Well, if Cain and Abel were the two sons of Adam and Eve, where do you think they got their wives? That's the answer is actually easy. The answer is in Genesis 5, verse 4. The days of Adam, after he fathered Seth, so Seth is the third son, were 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus the days of Adam, the days that Adam lived, were 930 years, and he died. Genesis 5:4 gives us the answer. Cain married his sister, obviously. Now you may say, well, that's disgusting. Well, not back then. Remember, you're back closer to the genetic source, which is Adam and Eve. They are the genetic source. And so the genetic makeup is more pure. There aren't the deformities in the code yet. There aren't mutations in the code yet. That happened later on. And you may say, well, it was biblically wrong to marry your sister. You couldn't marry your sister. The whole uncovering her nakedness and such. Well, that wasn't introduced until the Mosaic Law. Look at Abraham. He married a close relative. All of the ones in Genesis married closer relatives. And the reason is because that's who was there. And there was no problem genetically with marrying a close relative back then. Today, you're more likely to have the same genetic problems, the same genetic mutations over the years in your children if you marry someone who's a close relative. They didn't have that issue because they were right at the genetic source. And so it's not an issue. How can there be so many races in the world if we descended from Adam and Eve? If the Bible is true and we descended from Adam and Eve, how can there be so many races in the world? Well, again, there's a problem with the word race. When we think of races, quite often we think of different shades of color. And it's unfortunate because our color comes from a chemical that you have in your body called melanin. And that melanin, the more you have in your skin, the darker you are. The less you have, the lighter you are. And so again, it goes back to genetics. You know, you've got the makeup of this different shade tree of melanin, and some people have a higher level and some people have a lower level that they've inherited genetically. And so their skin, the higher level you have, the darker your skin will be. The lower level you have, the lighter your skin will be. If we were truly different races, then we wouldn't be able to produce children together, first of all, and we wouldn't be able to produce children of any shade color. And there have been historically, go ahead and look it up, Google it. This is one time I'll tell you, you have the right to Google something and get accurate information. Google whether twins that are different, they'll say different races, but there have been twins born where one is light and one is dark. Numerous ones. And how could that happen but that the genetic code is there to see that they have in their history more melanin in their genetic code, that their body produces more of it, and so they have a darker skin. And the same thing with the cats and the dogs going around the world and grouping together. We had with the human race did the same thing. And so you find different characteristics, and it's not just skin color. It can be eyes and how much fat you have in your eyelids and all sorts of things that group together because common groups tend to stay together. And so that's the reason we have certain languages in certain areas as well. It all works together. And so all of these characteristics that are characteristic of a specific region are because of genetics. That doesn't mean they're a different race. Actually, if we look back, there is only one race, and that's the human race. And so, if you try and match anybody of a different race, in the true meaning of the word, you've got a human and a cat or a dog or an elephant or something like that. And of course they can't. They have different number of chromosomes and cannot reproduce. And so why are there so many different races? Well, there aren't. There's one human race. Why are there so many variations in characteristics is really a better question. And that answer is simply genetics. And that groups tend to stay together. And again, just like the other, as the code goes, we tend to lose more information. We will continue this discussion with a few more questions next week. And thank you for tuning in to Freedom Fridays.